Greetings and welcome once again to the Gaming Codex, the show right to explain to you all the myriad of words and terms used to describe video games in the video games industry, and today's term is that of target lock. According to the general definition, target lock or lock-on is a game mechanic that allows the player to automatically center the character's aim on a target, which can be done with the toggle press of a button or passively active in certain situations. Target lock has its origins mostly in console video games. There are absolutely PC video games that have target locking, but it came about as a necessity for 3D console games. Well, sometimes even 2D games also feature it, but that's mostly an extension of the same idea. The problem was that you could not really accurately get your character to face the right way to fight an enemy in most console games back in the day. Controls were still primitive. We didn't really have analog sticks that allow a more granular control over the character and over the camera, and in some games you didn't even have control over the camera. The camera was in a fixed position and you had to deal with that. So in came the idea of locking your character's target always to an enemy. In games with fixed camera positions, sometimes step down or from a weirder angle, you would always be sure this way that you were facing your enemy and could shoot at it no matter where you were moving your character to. And you could still see the majority of the rest of the stage, so in case someone was behind you, you could unlock and maybe lock a different target and shoot them and, be on your merry way. In games that have a free camera, however, a target lock not only solved the problem but created a new one, namely that your field of view was now restricted to exactly the enemy you were targeting. You couldn't really move the camera around that much anymore. You're always facing the same character and you would be wide open for being stabbed in the back, which, let's face it, is not a fun experience, which leads us to the popular definition, and that is no, not that one, the other. Oh crap. Target locking in a lot of console video games is a necessity. You need to be able to see the enemy that you are fighting. You need to be able to know where they are, how they are moving in relation to you. You have to be aware of your enemy as well as your surrounding without constantly managing the camera stick, because if you do that, you're minus one thumb, and if you're minus one thumb, you can't really use 4 of the buttons on the gamepad. Now this can be seen as a defect of the gamepad, and I'm gonna get into that soon, but it is also a defect of the way that aiming is implemented in a lot of these games. And while a hard lock on the enemy does give you some advantages, like being able to strafe around them and have the camera move with them, so you'll always be in the right frame of reference, you'll always be in their orbit basically, it does have major drawbacks. So a different kind of system rose up alongside it, not replace it, because it doesn't really replace it, can't replace it, it's got its own issues, and that is soft locking, where the camera is not fixed on a single enemy, but your character's target is. So you can still move your character freely around, you still have full view of everything that's happening around you, you can be backstabbed, but your hits will always be directed towards the enemy. Now this can be achieved either by your action, by you actually toggling a button to target an enemy, or it can be done automatically by the game. This in itself may sound great, but it does have drawbacks. For example, games that do it automatically to the point where if you click a button to attack, your character will fly halfway around the map to kick someone in the face and die in the process because they picked a target that was so badly placed you'll be dead. Yes, I'm talking about The Witcher 2. Oh God, why did they have that targeting system in the game? It would be enough for you to press the attack button without a target for it to think, oh yeah, the player wants me to attack someone that's really far away, I'm gonna jump to them like half a mile. Also, since soft lock doesn't lock the camera to the enemy, it may not be the greatest ever for certain types of battles, like when the enemy moves around a lot, but it is better for battles where the enemy is so gigantic it can't actually fit on the screen, so you'll always be facing towards it, towards the parts you can attack at least, but you won't be completely murdered by the camera itself, because when the camera doesn't understand where it needs to be, it'll give you a very nice view of a wall and let you die. Now these systems aren't perfect, but they have sort of done done the job up until now. In my opinion, they've done it badly. And we move now to the marketing definition. That is, we don't like designing new things. While I really like gamepads, I think they're really underused for their actual potential. And none of their potential comes from moving a camera around in a 3D space in an action game while you're swinging swords around and mashing buttons to make attacks. The fact of the matter is that there may not be enough accuracy in the thumbsticks, or at least in most people's dexterity with the thumbsticks, to not require target locking. All movement on a gamepad is smooth. It is interpreted, if you will. Yeah, it's analog-ish, but you can compare it to the movement of something that's a lot more analog, like a mouse, where direct movement is recorded, where you can actually move fast and really accurate if you want to. There needs to be a equivalent for that in the form of a gamepad, but you have such a small area to work with on it that I'm not sure if it can actually be made. A trackpad probably will not ever replace a mouse, and it may not really be all that well suited to even replace a thumbstick. But the fact of the matter is that some of the best fighting games, like sword type action games, don't need target locking. In Jedi Outcast and in Jedi Academy, you don't need them, because you'll always be able to face your enemy by simply moving the mouse around, and that's because your aim and your camera are the same thing. You basically have tank controls in the other sense. I mean, your keyboard controls the feet and your mouse controls the torso. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, is because tank controls are what got us into this mess with target locking, because you didn't have good targeting with the tank controls. We had to turn the character around in Resident Evil and other games that have early 3D navigation like that. And yet this type of tank control may be the future, the way out of using target locking. At least in games that have cameras that are behind the character. If it's a fixed camera somewhere, target locking is still the way to go. You cannot really find a better substitute for it. But in games where the camera is behind your character and it's free to move, we can do a bit better. So closes another chapter of the Gaming Codex. Come back next time when we will talk about a brand new subject. Goodbye.